moved here about a year ago with the aim of trying to become more self-sustainable and to grow as much of our food as possible. The size of our property is approximately 1 acre, and it's within a much bigger farmland which we can use some of the resources from. Now, we are not full-time homesteaders. My husband works full-time and we've got 4 kids, 2 of which I'm homeschooling at the moment. And so our homestead is more like a hobby for us. So a lot of the projects we've been doing is in our free time, which is never enough to get everything done that we need to. But even so, we've managed to make a lot of progress in the past year, and I'd like to show you some of the things we've done. I hope this encourages you to try and do a few projects around your home.
When we first moved here a year ago, I was really looking forward to our new life with big vegetable gardens and fresh eggs daily. But I had a few challenges before I got started. Our property is a small part of a much bigger farm, and our property was not fenced. So we had sheep and goats coming to cut our lawn daily. I really love their visits, and I'm glad that I don't need to cut the lawn and that they fertilize it for me. But I did realize it would be useless to try to plant trees and vegetables with so many goats and sheep around. I looked for the most protected area to at least start something and decided that this raised area right by my front door would be the most protected. I started my Back to Eden style garden by laying down several inches of rotted wood chips on top of cardboard. It is not the ideal place to start a vegetable garden because it is very shaded throughout the winter and receives full sun throughout the summer, but it was better than nothing. After a year of observing what works and what doesn't, I have made a few changes to my original plan. Firstly, I added drip irrigation. Although the advocates for Back to Eden gardening say that one needn't ever water a Back to Eden garden, even in a very dry climate, I don't think that they were thinking of Africa dry climates. So at first I never had irrigation and I lost a lot of plants, especially when summer started. But once I added the drip irrigation, everything sprang to life within days and is flourishing. At first I planted a wide variety of vegetables and berries here to see what would do well and what would struggle, and now that I'm figuring that out, I'll soon be making some changes to focus on perennial plants that flourish in this area but are also pleasing to look at, especially seeing as this garden is right by my front door. We love the flavor of basil, and this perennial variety has beautiful purple flowers that bloom all year long. I've also found I can propagate it really easily from cuttings. So I think I'm going to remove all the other plants along this wall and just plant this perennial basil there. I think it will look very pretty and be very useful. The next plant that is doing great here now that we've added irrigation are these Egyptian walking onions. I haven't started harvesting them yet because I want them to spread and establish themselves really well, but they are here to stay. The plant that is doing best of all is this mint. I don't need quite so much mint, but at the moment I'll let it grow and feed it to my chickens. But I'll take most of it out sometime in the future. At the moment I have lettuce and peppers and strawberries, annual basil, a potato, and some blackberries that I need to transplant, lavender, rosemary, thyme, and a few other herbs. 2 plants that are currently here that I'm hoping will make it are the asparagus that I planted in the corner that so far has only sent out 1 spear all year long, and a pear melon bush that makes really interesting fruits about the size of an apple, but tastes like a melon or a sponge. I'd love to grow a whole row of the pear melons because they are such a unique fruit that we don't get in the grocery store, and they are supposed to grow very easily in our area. After my Back to Eden garden was established, the fencing around our property was still not finished, so I decided to start making raised bed for another area that is very close to the front door. This area will be used for entertaining, seeing as there is a braai built here, and so I decided it would look the neatest to have raised beds instead of another Back to Eden garden. Our little homestead will most probably not be an income generating one, so we are trying to spend as little money on our projects as possible. For this project, I used wooden planks from beds to make these raised beds. The one bed was a really broken bed that had been left here by the previous owners, and the other bed was a spare bed that we had used previously but didn't have space for in our new house. Instead of getting rid of that bed and needing to buy wooden planks to make a raised bed, we decided to convert the bed into a raised bed. I think they turned out really well. The only problem I have is that they are in full sun all day long and don't have irrigation, and I have to carry water here in a watering can from quite far away. So I'm thinking of trying to turn them into wicking beds to try to reduce the frequency with which I need to water them. I also have a large variety of veggies here, mainly things that we use often like lettuce and radishes, peas, beetroots and Swiss chard, and we had loads and loads of cherry tomatoes from these beds this year. One exciting change that is taking place is that more and more of our weeds that grow in our garden are now edible plants. As my herbs and veggies have gone to seed over the year, they have started growing everywhere. So here, next to the raised beds, I have wild rocket and broadleaf rocket, or arugula growing, which I didn't even need to seed. Soon there'll be food growing everywhere. The most exciting project for me was to get chickens. We've always had vegetable gardens, but we were not allowed to have chickens in town. So this is something quite new to me. After lots of researching, I decided that this chicken dome design would best suit our needs because it was cheap and easy to make and can be moved around quite easily. We live near the coast and it has held up through quite a few severe storms. I have made a few changes though through the year. The biggest problem I had is with the roost where the chickens sleep at night. In the original design, the roost is hung from the poles forming the dome. What I didn't realize is that chickens love to sleep all huddled together to stay warm and protected. But this meant that the roost was far heavier on the one side than on the other, and over time it pulled the entire dome skew. I've tried many things over the year to sort out this problem, and my most recent solution is to remove the roost from the dome structure and to have it freestanding on poles attached to the laying boxes. And so far this has worked well. My chickens have two laying boxes and they far prefer the one that is lifted off the ground, so I think I'll lift the other one up too. Chickens have really surprised me. They can really be as friendly as any pet you can think of, and they really do each have unique personalities. I especially chose heritage breeds for egg laying that are known to be friendly. My absolute favorites are the Brahma chickens with their fluffy feet. They are so friendly and allow the kids to pick them up and play with them. Even though we thought we were buying three hens, we have recently realized that one is actually a rooster. But he is by far the friendliest chicken we have and comes running up to you for a scratch and some snacks. My next favorite is my Easter egger, who lays big green eggs. She lays almost every day. She isn't quite as friendly as the Brahmas, but will tolerate being picked up by children. And then we have four Wyandotte Bantam chickens, one beautiful rooster and four hens. They are a bit skittish and don't like being picked up, but they are excellent layers and lay small eggs almost every day. Now, on all the beginner YouTube homesteading channels, I've heard over and over again that people would say, I initially free-ranged my chickens, but they caused so much damage that I had to keep them in a run. I am now joining them all with this rookie mistake. I would love to free-range my chickens, and I was hoping that our yard would be big enough so that they wouldn't cause too much damage, and that I would be able to produce enough food for both them and for us. But I've learned the hard way. All my wood chip paths ended up in my vegetable beds, and all the compost from my vegetable beds ended up in the pathways. All my seedlings and sprouted seeds were gobbled up, and despite having lots of spinach and tomatoes in the garden, our family seldom had the opportunity to eat them because the chickens always got them first. And so, with a heavy heart, I started confining them to the chicken dome. The dome is supposed to be big enough for 15 chickens, and I only have 8, so there is actually more than enough space. They also seem quite happy there. I was worried that the two roosters would fight, but there's been no problems. Perhaps once my garden is well established, I'll try free-ranging them again, and then there'll be enough food for them and for us. Next up are the main vegetable gardens. Towards the middle of spring we had our fencing completed, so I could begin on our main vegetable gardens. I thought I'd done some excellent planning for this and was really looking forward to starting. I used a no-till type of garden preparation where I laid down thick layers of cardboard and then covered with several inches of compost. One thing I never considered when planning my garden was how expensive the compost would be. Buying a few bags of compost is not too bad, but buying enough to cover this much land is going to cost a lot, and I'll just have to do it bit by bit. My plan was to have my vegetable beds separated by wood chip pathways. Then I could use the wood chips as mulch next year and just replace the pathways. I still think that this is a good plan, but my chickens then combined all the wood chips and the compost till you couldn't see where one began and the other one ended. So I started to make plan B. Now I'm starting to make semi-raised beds, using some wood that was lying around our property as well as some fencing poles that were removed when our new fences were put up. The other thing that I needed to change was that I was hoping not to need to make trellises, but to just use the fencing between our property and our neighbours, as well as the fencing on the sides of the vegetable garden to grow anything that needed to be trellised. But unfortunately, although the plants were safe on our side of the fence, whenever they twined around to the other side, the animals on the other side would eat them, and my plants would flop away from the fence. So unfortunately my plan didn't work, and I'll have to redesign my garden and not use the fences as trellises. There is this water tower structure that I can still use in the meantime as a trellis. So at the moment we are in autumn here in South Africa. I have planted a lot of peas and brassicas like cauliflower and broccoli and cabbage, and there are also a lot of radishes. I planted a few perennial foods like turmeric and ginger, which I hope will make it. We are lucky to have a mild climate, so I still have tomatoes growing, and now that my chickens are locked away, I hope we'll get to eat some too. My favorite vegetable that I was able to grow this year was potatoes. I planted 4 different heritage varieties and we had a bumper crop. Next up is my food forest. Okay, you'll have to use your imagination for this one, but my long-term plan is to turn this area into a food forest. At the moment, I try to plant one new tree every month. I observed which direction the shade falls, and so I decided to plant the smaller trees at the top of the garden so that they wouldn't shade the garden too much, and the large trees at the bottom of the garden. So far, I've planted granadillas against the fence, a mulberry tree, a fig tree, an elderberry tree, an avo that's really struggling, an orange, peach, grapevine, kumquat tree, a pomegranate tree, a blackberry and raspberry, a lemon, an apricot, an apple, and another peach. Each tree and each plant needs super protection because the goats and the sheep come in here. So I've put these wire cages around each tree to try and protect them. This is a wide variety of trees, and I know that some of them are not entirely suited to our area, but I thought I would try and perhaps they will surprise me. But if they don't do well, I won't be devastated. I think it is worth the gamble to try. Recently I've been learning a lot about fruit guilds, which is where you plant companion plants around your trees to support them. So this year I'll be focusing on doing that for each tree. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. So now for the real deal.
Now I'm not sure how to approach this topic without seeming like a complete Scrooge. The whole reason why we started our homestead was to provide enough healthy food for our family as well as to be a blessing to those around us. But what I've been really surprised about is how entitled people feel to our free food. For example, my daughter has an Easter egg hen, and when she laid her very first olive green egg, and I was so proud and just showing everyone this unique egg that our Easter egg hen had laid, I was quite surprised at how many people said, "Oh, that is so unique. Can I have it?" No, you cannot have it. This is my daughter's hen that has laid her first egg. It is our first ever green egg, and now you want it? And then the person would be quite taken aback. "But why aren't you sharing it? You got it for free. I'm just asking for one little egg." But that egg is just so precious to us. We've been looking after this hen for the last 6 months, and this is the first egg that it has laid. And now people are wanting to take it away from us. I was so surprised at how entitled people feel to our eggs. Another example is our potatoes. Now we had a bountiful potato harvest. I planted 4 different varieties, and they were quite unique varieties that I'd never seen or been grown before. And at the end of the season, I had 1 bucket of each variety of potato, and I was so proud of them. And so many people would say, "Oh, you've got so many potatoes. Can I have some?" And they wouldn't just want one to try out this new variety. They wanted a whole bag for their family. But then they would be quite taken aback when I'd say, I know this looks like a lot of potatoes, but I don't have enough to share. I specifically planted potatoes because it's a vegetable that my family loves, and I know it can be stored for a long time, so it can provide food for my family for a long time. And that got me thinking, if I was to go to the shops and notice that potatoes were on sale, and maybe I bought 3 or 4 bags of potatoes, and I told my friend, "Phew, our family's going to be eating a lot of potatoes from now on because they were on sale and I bought a whole bunch of bags," then I can't imagine that she would say, "Well, give me some then." Because she would know that I bought these potatoes to feed my family for a long time. But somehow, because I grew the potatoes and they were for free, now my friends feel entitled to say, "Where's my potatoes?" Now we have made a lot of progress on our homestead in the past year, and I'm feeling really proud of what we have done, and we are producing more and more of our food. But it's not nearly enough food to be self-sustainable for our family, let alone to be just giving it away willy-nilly to everyone that asks. My heart's desire is to be able to produce enough food for our family as well as to be a blessing for those around us. I think that we're in for some tough times ahead, and it would be great to be able to share the resources we have. But I've been really surprised at how entitled people feel to our food because they see it as free food. And I was wondering, those of you out there who grow your own food or produce your own food, whether or not you've experienced the same thing. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye.